Seeing that any modern interpretation will fall flat because this is Tyagaraja for most of us. Just at the time when Tyagaya is being made and his life and his mind is full, it's a big hit. It's one of the biggest successes of that decade. It brings him a lot of money, none of which he incidentally saves or puts aside. That is his problem in life, and more on that as to how he dissipated his wealth in a short while from now. But in the 45, 46, when Tyagaya is being made, in 44 actually, just as the work on Tyagaya is starting, Nagaya attends a concert in Mylapore and is coming back to Baslulla Road where his house is in T Nagar by car, and it is raining, and he sees a group of people huddling in a bus shelter, and he stops and asks them as to where they are going. This was the man, he was so kind hearted that who would bother about people standing in a bus shelter, but he decided to stop. It was late in the night, and he asked them as to where they were going, and they said, we are going to T Nagar. Bus services are very irregular right now, and there are no sabhas over there. We came to listen to music in Mylapore because we wanted to attend somebody's concert. Now Nagaya, being Nagaya, he makes 3 journeys and drops all of them to their respective homes that night by car, and then next day in the morning, he decides that a sabha should be created in T Nagar. He gets together 3 or 4 of his friends, Dr. V. Ramayengar, and then a couple of others, Ramaswamy Naidu, Saundaraja Iyengar, and others, and together they form what is called the Sri Tyaga Brahma Gana Sabha, which is where we are all seated today. And look at the foresight of this group of people, including Nagaya, which is quite amazing because in his personal life, he would not display that kind of foresight. But within the next year, they had bought this property. The property, initially they were functioning from the Dakshin Bharatiya Hindi Prachar Sabha. And then in 45, the family of Ramayengar, or it was T.A. Padmanabhan, I think, their family, I think, which gave the land initially on lease, and later on the Sabha acquires the property itself. And today, if at all there is a Vani Mahal over here, it is thanks to people like Nagaya. In 45, Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer inaugurates this auditorium. There is a concert by Ariyakudi Ramanuja Iyengar. And in this particular photograph, you can see Nagaya seated in the front row, attending a performance much later in life. And therefore, the Tyaga Brahmagana Sabha comes into existence, and it remains today one of his greatest contributions to Madras city. Breaking away from the Saint films, he makes a very, very path-breaking film, which is Beedala Paatlu, Yezhai Padum Paadu, which is based on La Miserable in French, and he plays the central character of Jean Valjean in this particular movie, the story of a man who is forced into wrongdoing, then reforms himself and sets right a number of things in life. And this film particularly, it gives rise to the character Jawar, which is the name of the inspector, and Sitaraman, who would play it, would become Jawar Sitaraman for the rest of his life because of the role that he played in this particular movie. But this genre, in the 1950s, this particular film is made. Nagaya sets the music for this particular film himself, and there are some lovely songs in the movie. There is one song that I wanted to particularly play for you, which shows Nagaya playing with a small child and singing songs about toys. The Telugu version is much better than the Tamil version, but I couldn't find the Telugu version in time, so I have placed the Tamil version here. But I cannot fault his Tamil in any way, but I'm only saying that as a song, lyrically it sounds much better in Telugu, because the lyric was clearly written first in Telugu, the tune was created, and then they force fit the Tamil lines to suit the same tune. You can make that out.
Bum chicka 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 bum chicka bum. Wah 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 wah, bodi wah, nasi papa, singara papa, shinnajiru kala mudaiwa. Nasi papa, singara papa, shinnajiru kala mudaiwa. Mango tulli ododiwa, venmadi kami, unnagai madanam. வெண்மருதானே புன்னகரதனம் வேண்டுடனாகும் மழை செல்லும் மலையவே இங்கே வாவா பொம்மைகள் தருவேனே வண்ணம் தீட்டிய பொம்மைகள் பாரு கிளி இதுவே கப்பல் இதுவே கிளி கிளி பார்த்தாயா குறைஞ்சு வினோதமான உருவமிது வா 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 போனிவா என்னாச்சு பாப்பா சின்னார பாப்பா சின்னஞ்சிறு தலைமுறை வா மாங்கோர் துள்ளி ஓடோடி வா.
At this time, there is this film called Thai Ullam, which is based on the English novel Eastland, which is a tearjerker about a woman who goes astray, leaving behind her husband. Several years later, comes back as a nursemaid to the children of the same family, etc., etc. A horrible novel. I've had the misfortune of reading it, and it scars you for the rest of your life, including the last scene, unforgettable. But anyway, the film was clearly made based on that. Thai Ullam is the name of the film, and Nagaya plays the role of the wronged husband. We don't have unfortunately, there's no reel of the film left, but you will all recognize this particular song. Vasanta Kumari. The main tune is taken from Thandi Hawaye, which is very clear, from Naujawan, the film starring Nalini Jayawant and with Lata Mangeshkar. But this na, 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 that particular portion is taken from the theme of Delilah in the film Samson and Delilah. And Nagaya has merged these two together in order to create such a wonderful composition. He was the music director for this particular film, and it is very clear that there are lots of Vasanta Kumari hits under his baton. So probably he really admired her versatility in music, and he used her very frequently in several of his films. In 1952, he announces the beginning of a film called Bhakta Ramadasu. He also, at this time, Nagaya is charging 1 lakh for every film. This is in the 1940s. And he acquires 52 acres or 52 grounds or some such thing of land in Kodambakam, where he wants to start a studio. At the same time, he announces the Bhakta Ramadasu film as well. B.N. Reddy is aghast. He goes and meets him, and he tries to tell him that, look, you don't have the understanding or the financial capability to run a studio. You can't do it. But Nagaya, because of the great days that he is in, and because of the income that he is making, he believes that he can get the films going and he can get the studio going. Unfortunately, the studio fails, and he is financially crippled partially because of that. Even that he could have made good. But Ramadasu takes 8 years in the making. By the time it is released in the 1960s, an entire world has gone by. Films of that kind are no longer in vogue. Parashakti has come, action films, the same genre is completely dead. And the heavy flowing dialogues in Telugu or Tamil, none of it was. Towards the end, N.T. Ramarao and Shivaji, who play Rama and Lakshmana in the film, and Anjali Devi, they all acted free for the movie because of the respect that they had for Nagaya. And when the final shot was over, Shivaji fell at Nagaya's feet and said, Appa, na poit vare. Because that was the respect that he had, that he held Nagaya. And Nagaya, of course, had acted as his father in several films. But when the film was released, it made money. It was not as though it was a flop. It ran for 100 days in some centers and all that. But the kind of investment that Nagaya had pushed into the film the kind of agreements that he had got into, the borrowings that he had made, none of it was going to be paid back as far as the film was, as far as his finances were concerned. And thereafter, it was a steady downhill path as far as his life went. He had to accept more and more and more roles in order to keep the home fires burning and in order to pay for the interest and pay for the loans that he had taken. Unfortunately, this was not the kind of man who ever believed in, saving for a rainy day. I told you about this Tyagaya and the kind of money that he made in it. In that film, there is a scene where 200 Brahmins come to Tyagaraja's house for participating in a Santarpana. Tyagaraja is giving them all money. Nagaya, in any other man, Vasan, for instance, or Evi Mayappan, would have got some 200 extras to come and act as those Brahmins and would have paid them one idli, one vadai, and maybe 20 rupees and sent them all off. Nagaya got genuine Brahmins from all villages, put them up in Madras for weeks on end in his house and in the film company offices. And finally, when they went back, he paid them dakshina that kept them without earning for the next 6 months. This was the way he had spent his money. And then when people came to him to ask for money, he would think nothing of going and borrowing from a money lender to give them the money. They would not return it. The onus would be on him to repay the loan. In 1953, when the linguistic division of states happened, and Prakasam Pantulu was going to become the Tanguturi Prakasam was going to become the first chief minister of Andhra, he needed money very urgently. Nagaya went and borrowed 20,000 rupees on his surety and handed it over to Prakasam. This was the kind of personality that he was. Even as a father, he did have some very memorable roles. One of them was Edir Paradadu with Shivaji Ganeshan and Padmini. A phenomenal, nuanced performance as the elderly man who, out of circumstances beyond his control, ends up marrying the beloved of his son. So that is the Edir Paradadu in the film. Lovely music, of course, Sridhar's direction, but Nagaya's acting is a class apart. With Shivaji and Padmini in the film, he manages to keep his scenes entirely to himself and he's totally noticed. The other film, which I really liked, and I think we have 10 minutes, so I'll finish by the time, is Sampurna Ramayana, where he plays the daughter-in Dasharatha. And what I enjoy the most about Sampurna Ramayana, it's a very heavy film, and the very long also. But the Tamil diction of everybody is just top class. M.N. Rajam will come only for 10 minutes as Surpanakha, but she cannot be forgotten even today for that particular 10-minute cameo appearance as Surpanakha. Similarly, this scene, of course, Nagaya wonderful as Dasharatha, but it always stands out more for me because of Kaikeyi's dialogue delivery.
சொல்லு, நிறைவேற்ற தயாராக இருக்கு.
விவரம் கேட்டதும் வேதனைப்பட மாட்டீர்களே.
வேடிக்கையாக பேசுகிறாயா?
சொல்லுகிறேன் சுவாமி.
உடனடியாக வரத்தின் விவரத்தை சொல்லு.
சுவாமி, ஒரு வரத்தா உங்கள் அருமை மகன் ராமனுக்கு பட்டம் கட்ட முடிவு கட்டியிருக்கும் அதே நாளில் அதே நேரத்தில் என் மகன் பரதனுக்கு முடிசூட்ட வேண்டும். வரத்தின் விவரத்தை சொன்னேன்.
என்ன விவரத்தை?
பரதனுக்கு பட்டம் சூட்ட வேண்டும் என்பது ஒரு வரம். விளையாட்டும் இல்லை, வேடிக்கையும் இல்லை, விளையாடவே கேட்கிறேன். என் மகன் பரதன் நாட்டை ஆள வேண்டும் என்பது ஒரு வரம். பரதன் முடிசூடுவதற்கு முன்பே ராமன் ஜெமுடி மலபுரி சரித்து 14 வருடம் காட்டில் வனவாசம் செய்ய வேண்டும் என்பது இரண்டாவது வரம்.
ராமன் காடு போவதா? பரதன் நாடாடுவதா?
உண்மையாகத்தான். உங்கள் மீது ஆணையாக பரதன் நாடாட வேண்டும், ராமன் காடு செல்ல வேண்டும். இதுதான் 2 வரங்கள்.
There would be countless such scenes where Nagaya would get giddy and fall down thereafter. But he was becoming increasingly typecast as an actor. In Ambikapati with Shivaji and Bhanumati, the man who had played Bhanumati's male equivalent, finally becomes Bhanumati's father. In Ambikapati, where he plays the role of Kulotunga. Thereafter, any number of photographs like this. Nagaya gets his Padma Shri from the government of India. When Randor Guy went to visit him to congratulate him, he said, I have only Padma, no Shri. That was the difficult situation in which he was. This is a photograph taken on his 60th birthday. This is another photograph taken on his 60th birthday, once again when with his wife and when religious ceremonies were being performed. He began acting in a number of curry westerns in various roles, but yet there were the odd diamonds and gems that were still there. For instance, in Tenali Ramakrishnudu, with A. Nageshwara Rao playing the role of Tenali Ramakrishna, he comes as the Timarasu, the minister Timarasu. The same film made with Sivaji Ganesan in Tamil, once again as Timarasu. One lovely folk song that he sings along with Tenali Ramakrishna. That song alone is enough to establish such a great actor. But, he had to act in more and more and more films in smaller and smaller and smaller roles, increasingly typecast. And there is this very famous story of Sandilyan going to see him in a particular set and asking him why at this age? And he told him, Udara nimittam bahukrita. For the sake of the stomach, several disguises have to be adorned. Nothing can be done. Nagaya finally passes away on 30th December 1973. And when he died, much of what he had, including his awards, had to be auctioned off. Some of them came into the possession of several other people. Finally, in 1977, Ituri Venkateshwara Rao, who was a journalist and who was a great admirer of Nagaya, he worked